Today we are talking about the layout for the lid of the Simple Harmony box. As you can see, I've got my finished stitching laid on my pattern piece, and we'll be talking about the changes I made to Jacob's pattern and layout to result in this lid piece. The lid piece has the fewest changes of any of the box pieces. It is substantially the same. So you stitch all of the complete motifs from pages 1, 2, 5, and 6 along with this motif exactly as it's charted on page 3, and that gives you this part right here. As you can see on the pattern, where we start making changes is this element here, his large crowned birds. That would be in this position, and this motif is much too large for this charted space. It would go well into the corner space here, and not only would you not get a neat overlap, you would have to cut into your stitching when you were doing the finishing, which is not advisable. So instead I substituted it with a motif of a similar size to this charted motif that's from this position on the pattern, and that filled this space very nicely. Now I overstitched this a little bit. I did the complete motif, which goes just a little bit over the pattern line. So as you'll see in the full layouts with guidelines and numbers that I've got on my website, I'm advising that you stop this motif 3 rows short on the right side. And then the way you are going to start the lid piece is to start 2 inches down, and unlike me, 3 inches in. I wasn't entirely sure when I began how I would make this fit the lid piece. What I eventually realized is that these 2 complete motifs lined up perfectly with the back. So this would be the pattern as it was stitched, charted, as you can see, goes right down there, partial motifs. If I just flipped these partial motifs on the patterns outwards, then I could fill the left side lid freeze. Now, in doing that, there are a few things you need to know. The motifs on this pattern are all mirrored, which means that if you rotate your page 180 degrees, or if you're using the PDF, you just use Preview or Acrobat Reader to flip the image in the direction you'll need. You'll have the other half of the pattern. You do need to remember one thing though, which is that the motifs all rotate around a central axis. So if you're looking at, say, a partial motif from this side, where this is the edge of the pattern and this is how it ends, if you flipped the pattern, this is what your image would look like. But you do not want 2 of these stitches here. You don't want to repeat that. This last stitch is the axis around which the pattern revolves. So instead of 2 crosses at the top like that, you would want a point. So you are not repeating what I call the center axis stitch. So this is wrong, this is right. If this is at all confusing, large resolution photos have been updated to my website, and you can just see how I have flipped every motif and use that to guide your stitching. Now, on the left side, there was room to do the full motif, so I flipped the entire thing. This is a completed mirrored motif. On this one, it goes 24 rows to the left of the center line. Please note when looking at the guideline images on my website that anytime you see a number, that's the number of rows and not the number of threads. So if I say that there are 9 between 2 reference points, I mean 18 threads, 9 rows, or essentially it would be 1 grid from a chart if this were charted. So you will start 3 inches in instead of 2 here so that you have more clearance on this side, 2 inches down, and then you will stitch here, 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 this, that, and then these motifs, flip them out, which will give you the bulk of the lid, and then you start filling in, as you'll find on my detailed layouts, which have guidance points that should allow you to count and exactly replicate my stitch. You fill in with the filler motifs. I have given you a key also that will show you where to find all of these on the pattern pieces. So I've marked this one as motif A, which is found on pages 10, 11, and 13. I've marked this as motif B, which is found on page 15. That's this one right here, only you don't stitch the full motif. It's minus 10 rows from the center line. Again, this is why it's useful to have a pattern, because you can lay your stitching over it and know when to stop. This I have marked as motif C. This is found on page 10 of the pattern, right here. And then I have this marked as motif D, found on page 9. And this last bit of filler is motif E, found on page 15. And then I filled out with letters and numbers very similar to Jacob's layout, although altered somewhat. I think I have a few less than he did because I was working with a difficult metallic thread over one and felt like I could live with a little more negative space. So again, all of these have got counts in the layouts up on my website, which are linked in the description, which should allow you to follow along exactly with my stitch if you want to place your letters and numbers in the exact same places that I did. Now, the one other thing I would really like to point out here is the orientation of this letter S. Now, if you're looking at it from above, as you are now, it looks like it's in the wrong direction. But when you are wrapping a piece around a box, you want to think about how you will see things. So if I am going to cover this, I've got this rolling down the back, this down the front, this down this side, and then this is rolling down the motif. And it's actually in the correct orientation for how you're going to see it once it's on the box. So these letters and numbers on this frieze are pointing downward because this part of the pattern rolls down onto the front frieze, and so it's all oriented in the correct direction. If you wanted to add in additional letters or numbers on the back or this side, you again would want to orient them pointing down in the direction of each side that they're going to be showing on the box. I hope that will help you get started with your stitch for the lid. Again, all of the details on how the extra motifs are placed with guidelines and counts are in the images on my website. I could insert them here, however, just flashing them on a screen is not going to be enough. You're going to want to have those pictures to refer to on your stitch, and that's why I have everything ready for you on my website. So that's the lid layout, and then I will resume in another video with the layout of the sides.